Hi everyone, it's Debbie with Book and BuJo. Welcome if you're new, welcome back if you've been here before. Let's go over my February stats and wrap up. So we'll start with stats and then we'll go to all of the books that I read in February and let's just get going. The shortest book that I read in February was 147 pages, and that was Under the Sea Volume 1, and this is an anthology of short stories, and it does say Summertime Myths and Magic, and it is by D.M. Million, R.M. Karpus, and C.C. Givens. The longest book I read at 1,316 pages, that was Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. The shortest audiobook that I listened to was Made in Manhattan by Lauren Lane, and that was just over 6 hours. The longest audiobook I listened to, and that was 62 hours and 48 minutes, Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. I read 5,789 pages in February, and I listened to 188 hours and 39 minutes of audiobooks. I participated in 5 readathons and 6 book clubs. Read a total of 14 books with an average rating of 4.2. For format, I listened to 3 audiobooks, read 5 ebooks, 1 physical book, and then 2 that were mixed media. 7 of the books I read were adult, 1 was new adult, and 2 YA, or young adult. I borrowed 4 books from my library, and I borrowed 1 book from a friend, and then I owned 6 of the books I read, which is amazing. Dropping down that unread TBR, always a good idea. For genre, I read 6 fantasy, no shocker there, 2 romance, 1 nonfiction, and 1 historical fiction. 6 of the books I read were from new authors, and 5 were from authors I've read from before. I started 4 series, and I continued 3. I finished none. Kind of a bummer, but I did read 4 standalones as well. For publication, I do like these stats here. So self-pub, I read 3. Indie published, I read 3, and then from traditionally published, I read 5. So I did read more self-pub and indie than I did traditional. And then my favorites. My favorite book of February was Forsworn, which was actually a January book, but I didn't read much of it in January. I pretty much read the majority of it in February, and it is over 900 pages. But Forsworn, which is the first book in the Forsworn Oath series by David Estes. Say that one 5 times fast. And I love David Estes' writings. His book is almost always my favorite of the month when I read them because they are just so good. Now for my favorite author, there are quite a few authors that I absolutely loved in February, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Robin Hobb. Now this is actually the cover for the second book in the series, but I read the first book, which was Shaman's Crossing, the first book in the Soldier's Son trilogy by Robin Hobb, and loved it, love her writing. Yeah, she makes everything so descriptive, like you can actually, as you're reading, you can actually picture it in your mind and like you're watching a TV show or something. So good. My favorite movie of the month was a little bit of a toss-up. There was a few that I liked. We watched some good ones. We also watched some repeats that we've watched before, like Notting Hill and 2 Weeks Notice, some of those, which are super cute. Love those. But I'm going to go with The Menu. And we always call her the chick from the chess series. I never remember her name, but she's in it. Here's a picture. But it was so good. It was very interesting. Now, it was mislabeled. It was labeled as a comedy. It is not a comedy. Definitely a thriller, but it was very good, very interesting. Definitely liked it. Favorite TV series is definitely a tie between Resident Alien Season 2 and the final season of Cobra Kai. Oh my gosh. If you are an 80s child in any way, shape, or form, you probably watched Karate Kid at one point. And I just love how they did the TV series. Like, spoiler alert for Cobra Kai, but if you've watched the 3 Karate Kid movies, actors from all 3 of those movies are in the TV series, which are amazing. I just think that is so cool. I was hoping they would bring in the next Karate Kid and have Hilary Swank in there maybe, but that didn't happen. But I was hoping. But I love just the way they treated the series and how they ended it and everything. Loved it. So good. Highly recommend it. And then, of course, Resident Alien. Oh my gosh. So fun. I mean, when you have a Mork and Mindy reference in an episode of Resident Alien, how can you not like it? Loved it. Let's move on. For The podcasts I listened to in February were all about hyperthyroidism, so nothing too exciting for the masses out there. But Dr. Osansky and Dr. Weston Childs both have, and as well as Dr. Alan Christianson, if you do have thyroid issues, either way, hypo or hyper, I would definitely recommend all three of them. And I can leave a link to each of their podcasts that I listen to. There's a couple of them where they are interviewing each other, so I might just link to those two, and then you can kind of go from there. And then the YouTuber that I have been watching the most in February. So before, I was really loving A Moment of Wonder because she just has some amazing baked goods, and I just love how she presents all of her videos. So she's behind the counter at a bakery, and she pairs books with baked goods and a drink, so tea, hot chocolate, something like that, and a variety of different baked goods, anywhere from cookies and waffles and brownies and just fun stuff like that. And she will pair the treat with the book and kind of tell you about the book as she prepares the treat, and then she kind of hands it to you. She's like, there you go, enjoy. And she has, I don't know, anywhere from 5 to 9 books per video, and it is just so cute. I love it. So that's who I was really watching, like November, December, January. But then I found another one, and I kind of go back and forth between the two. But the other one is Under a Tin Roof, and she is more of like a homesteader. She has like a farm, and there's chickens, and she has a bunch of cats, and they're just super cute. But then she goes into her kitchen, and she'll make stuff. And again, there's writing on the screen. There's no talking in either of them. It's just music in the background, pretty much, or like ASMR. And so she'll make, Under a Tin Roof will make, say, like bagels or donuts or some kind of soup or something like that, and she kind of takes you along the journey of her on her farmstead. And I just think that it's just so relaxing at the end of the day after we've watched a Cobra Kai or a Resident Alien. Right now we're watching Squid Game 2, so after an episode of that, we'll turn that on and read a book, or just have it kind of on in the background, or just sit and relax and enjoy my husband and my company together, and just enjoy a nice relaxing evening with that. And it's been a lot of fun. So I will leave her channel linked down below, as well as A Moment of Wonder, in case you want to check out both of those. Oh, and then all of the books I read were pretty much novels, except for one anthology. That's my other stat that I forgot. Now for the books. We'll start with the books I started in January, but finished in February. So I did read the majority of the books in February, but I did get started in January. And the first one is Real Self-Care by Pooja Lakshmi, and I did enjoy that one for the most part. There's some of it that it's kind of doesn't really apply to me at this time of my life, so the first half was great. The second half was a little more like, I think it's great information, just not for me at this time in my life. But I've locked it away up here, so in case something happens where I would need that information, I will have it. So I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're in a very high stress job, or you have a lot of stress around you in your life. Maybe you're a caregiver or something like that, where that causes a little extra stress. I would definitely recommend that book for you. Next book I started in January, finished in February, is of course Gwynne and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. And I read this one and another high epic fantasy almost at the same time, back to back. And that kind of killed my March reading a little bit, because I was like, okay, I've got some epic fantasies on here that I need to read, but I just, give me something short, sweet, little contemporary romance here or something, because I can't handle another fantasy for another week or so. I did just start a sci-fi fantasy so I'm finally getting back into the groove of things. So I'm a little behind on Wheel of Time and the Ketchup Book Club's Faith and the Follow Along, Faithful and the Follow Along. Is that what it's called? Well, we're supposed to read Valor. We're supposed to have it actually finished today, and I have not started it yet, but I'll get there. Anyway, Gwynne and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. I think I'm one of the rare ones that actually thoroughly enjoyed the book. It's not a 5-star at all. I would definitely say it's more of a 4. I think there are probably at least 300 pages, maybe 4, that probably could have been edited a little bit more or cut out completely to make it not quite so long. But I enjoyed the journey of going along with each of the different characters and seeing where their path was taking them and how they handled the situations along that path. So I did enjoy it, and I did enjoy the ending as well. And I thought that most of it kind of wrapped up realistically to the characters, like not like real life, but like Stormlight Archives real life. So yeah, I would give it a 4-star. The next book, there's actually 4 books that I started in January, ended in February. So the next one is Forsworn by David Estes, and I love this series, and it kind of follows along with Fate Marked and Kingfall Histories. It's in the same world, just different continents, different areas of the world. But this one has a couple of characters from the Kingfall Histories books that show up here, which I love it. I love that. Little Easter eggs, like you don't need to read any of the other ones to read this one, but it kind of gives you little Easter eggs in case you have read them, so very fun. But I love this series. There's a lot of great characters, but I do have 2 favorites. So my 2 favorite characters, they're kind of similar in lifestyle and profession. Sort of, kind of, one's with the assassin guild type of thing, and the other one is still somewhat of an assassin but works for the crown, right? So he's under the king, but he still basically does what she does. So Bryony and then the Ghost. I can't remember his actual name, but they call him the Ghost. But I love their chapters, especially when they interact together. Oh my gosh, so great. But then you have a couple other characters that are Forsworn. So you have, I guess you could say, the religious group, and they are also really interesting chapters as well. But I love this series. So there's something going on that the god's blood is getting to the masses and creating havoc in the world. And so the 2 who work for the Forsworn that are pledged to the goddess are there to try and figure out what's going on and try and stop what's happening, because things are getting mutated and not acting as they should. But then that's just a kind of one storyline, and then you have kind of some other storylines that go along, kind of get interwoven throughout. So good. I love them. But Bryony, chef's kiss. She's an amazing character. Love her. And she's also a character with a disability, as she lost her leg in a fire when she was young. And that's not a spoiler. That's kind of at the beginning of it, but love it. And then the last book that I started in January, it was just the last couple of days of January, and this was a buddy read, and we read it throughout February. We were basically reading 1 chapter a day. And that was Shaman's Crossing, the first book in the Soldier's Son trilogy. And I loved getting back into Robin Hobb's writing. She is such an amazing writer. Just the characters that she builds and the growth that each of the characters take throughout their path throughout the book is just amazing. So we follow Navarre from childhood, when he's just a little guy, all the way up until he goes into his schooling and up through like 18, 19, kind of around there. And you just see little snippets throughout his life where you get like a couple of chapters that's when he's this age, and a couple of chapters when he's this age, a couple of chapters when he's this age. And it's so nice to get back into her writing. It's so good. It's definitely a slow-paced book. Like The Realm of the Elderlings, there's journeying and like that kind of thing, where it's a slower pace, where you get like a couple of days in their life and then you get a couple more days, and it's not fast-paced action and fighting and all of that, but it's so worth the read. I would definitely recommend it. 5 stars. And of course, Forsworn, which I forgot to say, it was also 5 stars. Now for the books that I read just in February, started in February, ended in February. And the first one is The Tropic of Serpents, which is the second book in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series by Marie Brennan, who I just recently found out and didn't realize, but she is the M of M.A. Carrick, who writes the Mask series, which is in here, which I have not opened yet, but that's the series for the Broken Binding Fantasy subscription box, is the 3 books from that series, and I'll put it here because I don't remember what it's called, but Mask of Mirrors or something with masks. Here you go. So that was kind of exciting to hear that, knowing I love the Memoirs of Lady Trent series. So now I'm even more excited to get into the other series that she writes as M.A. Carrick with another author, and I don't remember who that name is. I assume it's the A in M.A. But The Tropic of Serpents, loved it. I still love this. I just love the writing style and just kind of feeling like you're in the person's head. Not quite stream of consciousness writing like Mrs. Dalloway is by Virginia Woolf. If you have not read this one and you like kind of the stream of consciousness style writing, I would highly recommend this one. It was great. But The Tropic of Serpents, I like the kind of archaeology aspect to it, the anthropology aspect to it, and just the entertaining fantasy aspect to it as well. And I'm looking forward to finishing this series this year. So I've gotten through the first 2 books. I have a few more to go. And that one I gave 4.5 stars. I also read Daughter of Fire by Sofia Robleta, and this one helped me to complete my blackout for our fantasy bingo. And I will leave that video linked up in the cards above, telling you which books I read for each of the different prompts. And this one was very interesting. It's definitely historical fiction with some fantasy elements to it, and it's about the Mayans when the Spanish conquistadors came over and kind of took over the land. And it was really interesting. I do like historical fiction, but I prefer kind of the escapism of fantasy a little bit better, and not necessarily some of the real world horrors that happen. But I did really enjoy this one. I thought the writing style was really good. The pacing was pretty even throughout the entire book, and I learned some interesting things too. And it was kind of 3.5 to 4 stars. I also read Golden Age, which is the first book in the Shifting Tide series by James Maxwell, and this one was an Amazon borrow. And it was very interesting. It had kind of Greek mythology in there, and you have this section of islands where they each kind of help each other out with trade. Like one island's really good at one thing, one island's really good at another. And one day there's an earthquake, and that brings a ship from lands a little further away, and they are not necessarily nice. And so they find out all about this one island, a little bit about another island that's in the area, and they end up going back to their land, and yeah, some things happen after that. Yeah. But the characters are all really interesting. I really liked our main character and the way she handled some of the different situations that came her way. Sometimes she didn't always make the best choices, but sometimes she did, and it was really interesting. Yeah, I would definitely, if I could get my hands on the second book, I would definitely read it. And I gave this one 4 stars. And then I read, which of course I've already returned all these books to the library, but I did read The Memory of Souls, which is the 3rd book in the Chorus of Dragons series by Jen Lyons. And I actually enjoyed this one too. I gave it 4 stars. And it's not necessarily my favorite series, but it's entertaining, and it's very fast paced. There's kind of that dry humor and a little bit of satire in there, and I do enjoy that in a book, kind of like Kings of the Wild and some of the Joe Abercrombie books. I do like humor in my fantasy. And I did enjoy it, and I will probably continue and finish the entire series, but it's probably not one I would own to put on my shelves, although I do like the covers of the books. And then I was supposed to read The Will of the Many, which is the 1st book in the Hierarchy series by James Ellington, and I did not read that. But I did roll it over into March, so hopefully I will get to it. And then I was supposed to read The Very Best of Charles DeLint by Charles DeLint, and I did not read that either, and I have not rolled that over. I will put the prompt back into my TBR jar, so if someday I may pick it again, but right now I have no desire to read it. So, yeah, more short stories. I already read one for February. I didn't need to read 2. Out of the 7 books on my TBR, I read 5. So yeah, I totally failed in March, but that's okay. I did read other books, which leads us into book clubs. For the BuJo Buddies book club with Jess from Jess Curran, I read Psyche and Eros, and that is by Luna McNamara, and I did love that one. It was really good. I gave it 4.5 stars. And again, we follow the Greek mythology with Eros, who was also known as Cupid. For the Catch-Up Book Club with Becca and the Books, we were to read Valor by John Gwynne, which is the 2nd book in the Faithful and the Fallen series, and I did not read that. But I did roll it over to March. Hopefully I will get to it. Yeah, by the beginning of February, like about midway through, I had just finished The Wind and Truth and Forsworn, and it was just too much. I couldn't take any more fantasy, high epic fantasy. I needed something short, and because those were both, 1,300 pages and 980 pages. It was a lot. So I needed something short, sweet, and cute, and more lighthearted. So Psyche and Eros fit the bill really well for that. And then for Game of Tomes, I am still reading The Magic Mountain. I am about 25% of the way through. That's another one that's over 1,000 pages, and it is long. And it's a classic, so yeah, I'm enjoying it, but it's slow going. I will probably finish that more like April or May. we'll see. And The Game of Tomes is with Carolyn Murray Reads. And then for the Hardcore Literature Book Club with Benjamin McAvoy, we were supposed to read in February Metamorphosis, and I did not read that yet either. It's a theme for February. It's fine. So yeah, I have rolled that over also into March, April. Whenever I get to it, I will read that. For March, though, the book is Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert, and I have already read this, and I love this book, so I will hopefully be replacing this one with this one for this month. Luckily, there are a few books on his list that I have actually read already, so that will help me to catch up on other books that I missed. For the Wellread Book Club, also with Carolyn Murray Reads, we were supposed to read Hamnet in February, and I did not read that either. But I have since read that in March, so I have read this, just not in the month I was supposed to. And then we have The Wheel of Time Readalong, which is Towers of Midnight by Robert Jordan, and I have not read that either. I'm not actually sure where we are in that right now, but I do have it on my TBR for March. Hopefully I will get that done then. And then for TBR Knockout with Completely Melanie, the prompt was to read a short story collection or a book under 300 pages. Well, I completed both with Under the Sea, Volume 1, and this one is 147 pages, so it's under 300, and it's an anthology of short stories. And again, by D.M. Million, R.M. Karpus, and C.C. Givens. It was very interesting. The first story, I think, was my favorite. I wished it was longer. I wanted more of that one. It was so good. There was probably only one or two that I was like, eh, the rest of them were decent, and I enjoyed. And then for Buzzwordathon, for the title word, you needed water words, and of course I read Under the Sea, Volume 1. And then for the cover prompt, it was skylines. You needed a city skyline on the cover, and for that I read Made in Manhattan by Lauren Lane, and I love that one. It was so cute. There's, you know, things in there that could have been better, could have been worded better or whatever, but I didn't care. It was just so cute. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And so we have a girl whose her parents passed away when she was young, and she was taken in by her grandmother and kind of grew up with her grandmother and her grandmother's best friend. And her grandmother's best friend, of course, is the wife of this company that's huge, makes millions kind of a thing. And the friend is kind of hanging in as the CEO until her son kind of gets his act together and can take over the company. Well, things happen and finds out that that's not really going to happen, and so she's trying to figure out how to keep this business in the family because it's always been in the family. And some unexpected twists and turns happen, and yeah, it just makes for a really cute story. And then for Goobrathon, there's two prompts. You can pick one or the other, and for this particular month, I did do both. And the first prompt was a violet, and that was to continue a series, and I actually continued a couple of series, 3 series, I believe. And I read Tropic of Serpents by Marie Brennan, of course, the second book in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series. And the second prompt was Primrose, read a middle grade or YA, and for that I read Golden Age by James Maxwell, the first book in the Shifting Tide series, and this is YA. For Sathvarathon, I didn't write down what the prompt was, but I was supposed to read Valor, and I didn't. I'll have to double up on that for March. And then for Year in Aldea, for Ariel, she went to 2B, which was west. She had to read a book from the middle left side of the shelf. So I took my TBR and made a shelf with it and went from the middle left side of that and picked The Memory of Souls by Jen Lyons, the third book in A Chorus of Dragons series. And then for Karasu, he chose 2C, south, and he had to read a book from the bottom shelf. So I picked the last book on my TBR, and that was not this one, but Robin Hobb, Shaman's Crossing, the first book in the series, the Soldier Sun series, and did complete both of those. And that was it. That was everything I read and definitely did not read in February. So hopefully I will do better in March. So far, so good. So I'm filming this a little late. It's March 9th. I have already completed 10 books. Very excited about that. Some of them were short, like a 4-hour audiobook, and one book was 26 pages. When I originally looked at it, it said it was 288 pages. It was not. It was 26 pages. But I finished that this morning, so that was nice. And one of the audiobooks, yeah, was 4 hours, so that one was nice. And it wasn't actually on my TBR. It was for one of the Readathon prompts, but that's okay. I read it. And also, last year, at the end of February, beginning of March, I received an ARC copy of a book that I loved it. It was so good. Gave it 5 stars, and that was The Heart of a Valkyrie. And it's the first book in the Vinland to Valhalla series by Melanie Karsak, and I loved it. I thought it was so good. And I didn't even think about the fact that the second one was going to be coming out. Didn't even have it on my radar. And I got an email, and it had a link to an ARC copy for the second book. I was so excited. And I'm now reading that. And so I kind of stopped all my other books, and I'm reading this one because it comes out on the 13th. And I want to make sure I have that finished before then. So, so excited. I am so excited. And I'm already about 20% of the way through, and I am loving it. It's nice because at the beginning, she has like a little glossary of all the names of all of the people and the characters and kind of who they were. So just kind of a quick skim through that. I was like, okay, I remember what happened. I remember where I am, what's going on. And so as soon as I got into the book, I was like, yep, I know what's going on. And I'm so excited to be back in that world. So it's Vinland to Valhalla is the series name. And it's the group of people that are living in Iceland that are the Vikings, and they're going out to conquer other areas. And it's kind of funny, a little spoiler, but one of the raiding ships is going from Iceland to Southampton, England, which I thought was quite funny because I will be going to Southampton, England in April. So the name just totally stuck out, and I was like, oh, this is so much fun. And I believe Greenland may be coming into play somewhere in here too. So I'm very excited. I love these. They are fantasy, they're historical, there's some romance, lots of action, super fun. You got mythology in there as well. Love it. Now, I didn't do a reading journal plan with me this last month because I'm still working on my energy and brain power. But I did actually do one. And also in February, I really did not like the colors that I chose for my bullet journal. So I was kind of like, nah, all about it. And so I threw away whatever plans I had for March. And I just saw this washi tape and I went, yes, dark, black, burgundy. Yes, that's where I'm at. Oh, and I was also able to use my dragon stickers. They're so cute. I love them. Journal Say has such great products. I love them. Okay, and before I keep being all spastic, let's go ahead and end this video. So here's my TBR, and I have already finished everything on this page of my TBR. And I've finished these 2, and I still have these 2 to go. So I am very excited for my reading in March. I've made up for all the books I did not read in February, and I'm doubling that this month. I'm very excited about that. So I have 10 books in already for Readathon, which go Ravens. And then also I am on Team Tome Raiders, which is an awesome name, by the way. So good. Kudos to my teammates who picked that name because I came late to the game and it took me a while to figure out what team I was on. I finally found it. I'm on Tome Raiders. And I have gotten 2 submitted for that one so far, and I've got a few more to go. But these ones, most of the ones on that one are the more fantasy ones that I haven't read yet, like The Will of Many. I did start Leviathan Wakes. I have not read Valor yet, but I'm getting there. And I did finish my 2 NetGalley books, so very excited for that as well. Thank you again so much for joining me for my February stats and wrap up, even though it got a little spastic there towards the end. Bear with me. I'm just still finding my groove again. And thank you also to all of you who continue to support my channel with your comments and your likes and just watching me be all weird and spastic up here on the screen. Thank you so much. And if you made it this far in the video, leave some sort of book emoji in the comments to remind me of how much I love to read and to get back into it. And until next time, keep reading. Bye.